Welcome back to ABC News Live First. Right now, a crash reconstruction expert is back on the stand in the Karen Reed murder retrial. Judson Welcher is facing questions from the defense about his analysis of the murder scene. Reed is accused of hitting her then boyfriend, Officer John O'Keefe, with her car and leaving him to die in a snowstorm in 2022. She pled not guilty to second-degree murder, among other charges. For more, I want to bring in ABC News Live anchor Phil Lipoff and civil trial attorney Tre Lovell. And gotcha. Well, and Tre, I want to bring you in here because as you were hearing the defense cross-examine this witness, I mean, what do you make of their line of questioning?
I think it's pretty effective. They're really going at all angles on this, all discrepancies, inconsistencies with the other experts. And I think they're doing a pretty good job. Nobody really knows what happened in terms of there's no videotape, there's no eyewitnesses exactly. So they've got to reconstruct, so to speak. And in terms of what the defense is doing, he's a good witness. And I think they're doing, what they can to poke holes in his testimony.
Well, and you just brought up no one knows what happened. That really kind of gets to what the defense is trying to prove here, and it's that reasonable doubt. All right, you've been listening to the Karen Reed murder retrial, and ABC News Live anchor Phil Lipoff and also civil trial attorney Tre Lovell are still with me. They've been listening in, and Tre, it's not lost on me that this cross-examination it's pretty contentious at times. I mean, you hear them bickering over what slides to show and how much time it will take to pull up certain data. I mean, what do you make of that particular approach?
It oftentimes is, because when you're dealing with an expert, you're dealing with somebody that knows his area better than as an attorney you ever will. And so they're going to be smarter with you at that. So you've got to keep your questions limited, very specific. And attorneys get frustrated when they're dealing with experts because experts know the area better. So this lawyer's good. He's had his experts prepare him. He knows the target areas. But it's always frustrating because of the subject matter. So it's not unusual.
Well, and if you are a defense attorney for Karen Reed on this team, I mean, it seems like the big thing that they are trying to poke holes in right now is that, this Dr. Welcher, his conclusion seems to be drastically different from what we've heard from the medical examiner.
That's correct. And that happens too sometimes. When you have two different types of experts, one is a pathologist that's doing the forensics on the medical, the other is an accident reconstructionist. Sometimes they're not going to be totally aligned, but the prosecution has to put them in the same vicinity. And in closing, they will try to tie it together. But the reconstructionist, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. Finish your thought.
No, I just say, the reconstructionist here, he's like the tip of the pyramid, bringing everything together. We've had DNA forensics testimony. We've had the pathologist. We've had the neurologist about the brain trauma. So now we need to put the vehicle, the crash, and the injuries together, in symbiosis with that. It's not totally going to be aligned, but that's the goal, and that's what he's there to do.
Well, and Phil brought this up, but Tre, if you were representing Karen Reed, would you advise her to testify?
No, definitely not. This is a reasonable doubt case. It's not as much as a he said, she said. This is reasonable doubt. So what you need to focus is on the alternative theories, poking holes in the lay witnesses, and the collection and investigation on this side is horrendous with respect to the police. You don't see it this bad in most cases. And they're going to harp on that all day long. It's going to be, how can you rely on the prosecution's case when the evidence collection was so bad? Plus, here are our witnesses that are going to say it was a fight. There's no way that these injuries happened from an SUV. There's a reasonable doubt.
All right, Phil and Tre, thank you both. I'm Alex Brachet. The news never stops, and neither do we. We have a lot more news after the break. All right, for more, I want to bring in ABC News Live anchor Phil Lipoff and a civil trial attorney Tre Lovell. Well, and Tre, I mean, what do you make of this approach by Karen Reed's defense team?
It's challenging, but what they're doing is they're throwing out the question, shouldn't you have done a different graphic? Not as concerned about what he's going to say, but to gear up their experts. because their experts are going to come on board and say, hey, he made a mistake. This doesn't accurately depict what happened. It could have been more clear. This is where he made mistakes. So a lot of these questions, even though you want to get favorable responses from the expert, you're setting up your own expert so they can directly combat and take that question and show the jury, why it's important and give a different answer. And when you have different answers and you're not sure, that's reasonable doubt.
Well, and Trey, looking ahead, whenever the defense actually presents their case, Phil was detailing last half hour that the witnesses were expecting to hear from some of the other officers that were in that house. What do you think, what does that telegraph in terms of their strategy?
Yeah, no, I think Phil's right on with this. So the strategy is going to be, they're going to call some of the LAPD people. They're going to exploit the mistakes they made. And then they're going to have some of their own witnesses who are going to jump on that and show why you can't trust those results, why you can't trust the collection, the sampling, the analysis, because all of that stuff supports what the experts are saying. So it's very important to attack the collection, because if you're waiting a year and a half to take witness testimony, if you're waiting a long time to submit samples to the lab, contamination can happen. Unreliability can happen, and their experts are going to be all over it. So I would assume they're going to do more of the evidence collection through the LAPD people, tee it up for their own witnesses, and show you can't trust it.
Gotcha. All right, Phil and Trey, thank you both.